Hello and welcome to The Works. I'm Ben Shea.
And I'm Ben Peltier. In our studio today, not only does trumpet soloist Håkan Hardenberger perform with many of the world's leading orchestras, he's also regarded as a pioneer of new trumpet works. We'll be hearing from him later.
We'll also be looking at the collage works of German artist Niels Karsten, over 40 of which are showing in the exhibition Cutting Room at the Pearland Galleries.
But first, a document whose ideas and ideals have changed the world. That's the 800-year-old Magna Carta, or Great Charter, signed by the highly unpopular King John of England in 1215 as a solution to a political crisis under considerable pressure from a group of rebel barons. The charter established for the first time the principle that everybody, including the king, should be subject to the law.
Not many of the specific provisions of the Magna Carta are in law today, but the principles underlying it remain a cornerstone of British political life and the common law system, and its influence has spread around the world. From Wednesday to Saturday this week, one of just 4 surviving copies of the Magna Carta is on show in Hong Kong.
In what it represents, the Magna Carta is perhaps the most important legal document in the common law world and beyond. The barons who forced King John to sign it one June day in 1215 at Runnymede on the River Thames were more concerned about their own rights and status than those of the common man or woman. But the document established crucial principles of justice, that no one was above the law and everyone should be equal before it. The Magna Carta's text was challenged and renegotiated 4 times over the following decade, and almost all its clauses have since been repealed in common law. But that underlying principle is a crucial element for any nation that believes in rule of law as more important than the privileges of the powerful. This year, to celebrate its 800th anniversary, a 1217 copy of the Magna Carta, owned by Hereford Cathedral, is traveling to 9 cities across 3 continents, accompanied by a copy of the King's Writ, sent out by King John announcing its terms. The tour is part of the British government's Great Britain promotional campaign.
Magna Carta is an extraordinary document. It's now over 800 years old, and it really shows that people's aspirations for freedom and justice. Well, we're really thrilled that the document is coming to Hong Kong. It's only going to about 9 places around the world, and they've been chosen very, very carefully because of the special characteristics and the relationship that they have to Magna Carta. For example, it went to the UN, the United Nations in New York, for the General Assembly. It went to Luxembourg, which is the home of the European Court of Justice. It's also been to China, mainland China. It's been to Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou. It's coming to Hong Kong because Magna Carta is part of Hong Kong's heritage, because the rule of law is really the thing that sets Hong Kong apart, and Magna Carta embodies that.
Clauses 39 of the Magna Carta stated that no free man could be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions or outlawed or exiled or deprived of his standing in any way, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. Clause 40 added the confirmation that these rights to justice could not be sold, denied, or delayed.
Well, of course, the provisions that were in the document 800 years ago, some of them aren't relevant today. Some of them were very specific about, say, collecting grain tax. But the basic principles and the values that the Magna Carta embodies are still relevant today.
Where we have these rights and freedoms, we have to always watch to guard them, that they're not being taken from us or they're not being somehow eroded and removed. We can never just trust that because something has been written down, it will stand forever. We have to renew it in every generation. And part of the joy of working with Magna Carta this year has been the chance to talk about it so much and to remind myself, but also to be able to remind other people what it's really about and what really matters in it.
The document has influenced many constitutions and legal systems, including the United States Constitution, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the European Convention on Human Rights. It also underpins the rule of law and the Basic Law in Hong Kong.
So the Magna Carta has direct links to the basic law of Hong Kong. It can be reflected in not only the judgments that we have seen, so Chief Justice Geoffrey Ma has referred to the Magna Carta on numerous occasions, but we can see it also reflected in the basic law itself, in the articles that are directly attributable to Magna Carta. Property rights, for example, Article 6 and 105. You have Article 28 on access to the courts, and you also have equality before the law. There are also articles of the Basic Law that are indirectly attributable to Magna Carta. For example, you also have other rights that in the Magna Carta, like freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, and other key human rights that we have here in Hong Kong.
Just as King John did not welcome the Magna Carta's limitations on his power, nor do many of those who wield power today. Its principles have had to be defended and fought for over many generations and in many places, even here and now.
The comments that have been made in recent months by the liaison office here in Hong Kong and by the chief executive, I think, are quite problematic for the rule of law here. Having someone who is transcendental to the law essentially undermines the principles of separation of powers, equality before the law, and numerous other issues that we would associate with the rule of law. The legal tradition here in Hong Kong, or the rule of law here in Hong Kong, is really being challenged in a way that perhaps it hasn't been before. So it is lucky that we have the Magna Carta perhaps to remind us of the importance of these concepts that it encapsulates.
For art lovers, the third Art Gallery Week, which runs until this Sunday, has much to offer, including more than 20 new exhibition openings and 40 free public events.
With over 50 galleries taking part, the event also includes talks and public tours by curators and collectors. From 2001 to last year, Hong Kong art lovers could take part in an annual charity event called Art Walk, which offers them an evening to gorge on the works on offer in dozens of local art galleries. There hasn't been an art walk this year in 2015, but all-you-can-eat art fans need not despair. Since 2013, it has been complemented by another event designed to reduce the sense of intimidation some might feel about walking into private art galleries. That event is the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association's Art Gallery Week, which includes exhibitions, talks, tours, performances, workshops, and a family art day. This November, Art Gallery Week also launched an internship program to encourage young people to be more engaged with the art scene. Over 200 interns were recruited to work for the whole week.
Basically, Art Gallery Week is more than a week filled with activities. As for Art Walk, it is a nice night and evening out for visiting galleries. Another main difference is that because we are a grantee of the Arts Development Council, so all the activities, every activities that we have organized are free for all. Everything that is packed in this week are designed by directors of galleries. And we allegedly know a lot about art and artists. So the program itself is designed from the field, from professionals.
Joining Art Gallery Week for the first time this year is the 5th global branch of Errata Galleries, which opened its doors in Hong Kong last November. Specializing in Russian art, Errata started as a private museum in St. Petersburg. Gallery manager Jillian Au says Hong Kong was their first choice when they decided to explore the Asian market, and they were particularly excited to get the chance to draw on different people during Art Gallery Week.
So Errata, we focus on Russian contemporary art. We work with different, around 150 artists from Russia, around 20 regions, so we have a very big artist base. but we only focus on Russian contemporary art. I have a lot of people coming in just be like, we didn't even know Russian contemporary art is a thing. Definitely there should be, we need a lot of education for the general public still. But generally, Russian contemporary art is very new to the international art market anyways. So people are very well accepting it, very interested in it, a lot of good feedbacks.
This year's Art Gallery Week involved more than 50 galleries, all members of the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association. Membership is restricted to those invited and vetted by the Board of Directors. Co-President Henrietta Choi Leung says it is not hard to become a member as long as you meet the criteria, and that they hope the association will benefit local artists as well as the galleries.
Basically, we need to see that that particular gallery has a physical space, and then the gallery has to have a set program every year, an annual program. For example, how many shows per year and what type of shows they have been doing, and that they are not a virtual space. And we are really building the industry as a whole and really not selling one piece of artwork, but by promoting what galleries are, why galleries need to exist, why are we important to local artists, etc. We could help invite art lovers to become buyers and buyers to become collectors, because artists need people to really collect their work to be able to have a living, right?
Welcome back.
Among the 20 new exhibitions opening during Art Gallery Week is German artist Niels Karsten's first solo exhibition in Asia. Called Cutting Room, the exhibition showcases more than 40 of his collage works.
Karsten says that for him, the laborious process of cutting a variety of images from magazines, books, photographs, propaganda materials, and so on becomes a meditative ritual. The cut-out images are then rearranged to form a new narrative. Karsten says his goal is to own all images.
I mean, in retrospect, I always wanted to have own images, and I think somehow by cutting them out, by tracing them, I always believe an idea has to evolve. Cutting room comes from the idea that you're editing films in a cutting room, so things are being cut up, being put together in like different contexts, or like there are little breaks, and the suspension is being created. So it's a little bit about the editing, the way I use like cutouts and recontextualize them and create new narratives or associations. I always have been drawn to images. I often go through comics and don't even read the comics, or I go through magazines, I don't even read the stories. I'm just falling in love with these isolated images. I constantly cut out pieces. I probably cut like tens of thousands of images out in the last, 10 years. It's a very meditative process. So the cutting itself is a thinking process. So even though they seem very random, they're very organized. Is there just one way of organizing them? Not really. So it is like certain juxtaposition, certain playful narrative that might be important for me, not necessary to the viewer. But my experience is that the viewers in front of a piece like this do the same things. Yeah. They map through the thing, they discover things, they put it together, they kind of search for this meaning. I think making art is always a very hopeful process to me. No matter what I do, sometimes people ask me why there is such a bleak notion in some of my works. Yeah. I think it's still a celebration of life rather than anything else.
Trumpet soloist Håkan Hardenberger performs with a veritable who's who of the world's great orchestras, including the New York Philharmonic, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, the Swedish Radio Symphony Orchestra, and the London Symphony Orchestra. Conducting is also an important part of his music making. He's here in the studio right now.
Håkan Hardenberger, welcome to our studio.
Well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here as an international classical trumpet soloist. There aren't that many of you, are there?
No, and in fact, you know, when I was a kid, it was not what you did. We were not supposed to be a soloist. You know, trumpet should stay in his place. But luckily, there was Maurice André, the great French soloist. So there was at least one role model.
Well, he really paved the way for just a handful of you guys that have come since.
Yes.
And it's certainly a remarkable thing, though, because the trumpet is a magnificent solo instrument, isn't it?
Very old solo instrument. You know, the first trumpet concertos were from around the same time as the first violin concertos. But then it was an instrument that needed development. It wasn't chromatic in those days. It was very connected to the war field, to church, you know, and certainly didn't fit in the romantic times. So we have no Beethoven, no Brahms, and something needed to happen. So jazz happened, and then a lot of composers in the past 100 years has discovered the instrument as a great solo instrument. You know, I find very human voice.
And you've played such an important part in developing the modern trumpet repertoire and championing living composers and music written for you.
It was clear. There was the Haydn, there was the second Brandenburg of Bach, and a bunch of D major pieces from the Baroque, and that's certainly not enough. You know, it's not enough when a great conductor wants to program something with a symphony orchestra. You need to have music that will stand there with strong pieces, you know. So I just had to start and to get that process going. And now, for instance, just past week, I played in Tokyo a new piece by Brett Dean, an Australian composer, and the piece is only 2 years old, and I've played it over 20 times already. So it's a great success of a piece.
But that's another difficult thing with modern music. Sometimes it doesn't always resonate with all audiences, and then maybe one or two performances and the piece kind of fades out. But you haven't had that experience, have you?
Well, with certain pieces I have, and you have to, I think it's comes from different sides. You have to build up a trust with the audience. You know, you have to do the things that you really believe in yourself, because if you pretend, they're going to find out sooner or later, you know. You really have to do what is really you need to do. It has to be something you have to do, and if you don't do it, you feel sick. That's what being an artist is about. And then if you can manage to get the audience to trust you, they will maybe also go along with your choices.
If you could just play something for us, what would you like to play?
I often play as an encore. It has a little story, because when I was studying with Tom Stevens in Los Angeles, he had very many ways of making me think. And one lesson, he came and he had a cassette. It was still in the days of cassette tapes. And he had a cassette with 32 versions of Chet Baker playing My Funny Valentine. And he said, listen to this and then we'll talk about it. But it's been a tune that I've always loved, and it's a trumpet classic. And it's also, you know, I play often as an encore because it kind of closes the door.
Håkan Hardenberger, a real pleasure.
Pleasure.